For those of you that aren't familiar with STEM, the acronym stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. And in my 20 years in education, I have seen kids become the most perseverant problem solvers just using STEM education in the classroom. But first, before I jump in, I think it's time to reflect for just a minute. I want you to think about some of our greatest visionaries. And I want you to think about the contributions that they have made and consider what our world would be like if they hadn't made those contributions. It's interesting, but it would probably be a lot darker than it is right now. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I can also say thank you to Thomas Edison, among others. Thomas Edison was once asked by a reporter, "Mr. Edison, how could you have continued to work on trying to develop the electric light bulb after you had failed 1,000 times?" And Edison's response was rather poignant. He said, "Sir, I did not fail once. I found 1,000 ways that did not work." Really sort of reframes your thinking about failure, doesn't it? Edison didn't believe in failure. He believed in perseverance. Now, what would happen if Thomas Edison were in school today? Tommy's got his science homework and he brings it back into school. Now, would he be given an F because that assignment was so late? Or would he be given an A for his perseverance? It really comes back to what we value. Great thinkers in science, technology, engineering, and math, they value certain qualities, that of continually being curious and the ability to persist when challenges get tough. Albert Einstein has a wonderful quote. He said, "It's not that I'm smart, it's just that I stay with problems longer." When I think about kids in school today, they have that same potential. But do we give them the opportunity to stay with problems longer? The way schools are often structured, we focus a great deal on product rather than on process. We teach a certain number of minutes in dedicated content. We teach them procedures. We teach them to strive for that right answer. And if they're successful, they get good grades. I mean, raise your hand if you can identify with that model of teaching. I know I can. Thank you. That is until I got into college in my education program. And I met an amazing man who sort of transformed my thinking in learning and teaching. I have a canning jar here. If you're not familiar with a canning jar, the old canning jars that your grandmothers used to use to can vegetables and whatnot, there's a two-part metal lid that goes into a canning jar. And what I did is I took out the metal insert and I replaced it with a window screen. So that screen is porous, and so of course I can pour this green water right through there, and you turn it over, and of course water comes out. The interesting thing when you have a teacher like Dr. David Keller, he shows you how you can do something absolutely astounding and make people really wonder. Now, you've seen this water come out repeatedly. It pours out. It's porous. Now, that's pretty fascinating. Clearly, I could walk into a classroom and do that and tell the students what we're going to talk about on that given day, but that's not what he modeled for us. He modeled for us setting up a problem that was pretty dynamic and engaging, and then empowering us to figure out how did that work. Through exploration and problem solving, we figured that out. Well, you can imagine, with that sort of a model as my science methods instructor in college, I was pretty pumped about teaching science when I got my first classroom. And I quickly engaged the kids with hands-on experiences just like this and taught the kids how to problem solve, and they really understood high-level content. In 2007, I was awarded with the Presidential Award in Excellence in Science Teaching, and I was invited to Washington, D.C., and for the first time in my career, I heard about STEM education. I'd never heard of it before. And before I left, I was so inspired. I remember driving back from Washington, D.C. and telling my wife, "Oh my gosh, I have to do this in my classroom." Thinking about focusing on process and giving projects to the kids where they really could grapple with problems even longer. So as we're driving back, I'm brainstorming, and we start contacting different organizations when I returned to Michigan, and I started collecting projects to do. And my wife and I started collecting every recyclable object you can think of, not knowing what students would want to use in their prototypes. So years ago, my first endeavor in STEM education in my classroom, I decided I was going to do an extension of the current electricity unit that I had just finished with my third graders. And my plan is my students were going to be electrical engineers. I'm going to give them these blank blueprints. They're going to draft these wiring diagrams. They're going to wire these little miniature houses with lights and motorized ceiling fans and switches. And then I would come in as the electrical inspector, and I'm going to inspect their work. And if they did a nice job, if the wiring diagram is accurate, if the house is safe, they earn their electrical permit. It's a great idea. So I pass out these blueprints, and I'm walking around, and the kids are very excited, and they're filling in their blueprints, and suddenly I got this sick feeling in my stomach, realizing that none of these plans, not one of them was going to work. And I didn't know what to do. I thought, oh my gosh, I should just stop this. Obviously, I need to reteach. But they were so excited, I just let it keep going. But what happened sort of changed my thinking about education yet again. The students didn't get frustrated like I thought they would. Their circuits didn't work. But what do? They look back at their wiring diagrams and they start problem solving and troubleshooting. And suddenly these 8-year-old kids are teaching me about the engineering design process right in front of my eyes. They had planned, they had designed, they had executed. It didn't work. They're going back, they're replanning, they're redesigning, they're changing. As these projects continued, I started having a lot more faith in the wisdom of children and realizing that their perseverance was incredible if given an opportunity to showcase it. So as I continued with these projects, I learned some other things along the way. I learned you have to keep them as open-ended as possible because the same challenge can have very, very different results. I also learned don't give very many rules, and finally, show them no models at all, nothing to copy. I'm going to show you 2 very short video clips with my students doing the same task, and you'll see how they approached it differently. The challenge with this, they had to develop a ball launching system that is going to launch a ping pong ball and land in a bucket. Okay? We even ended up with this coordinate grid on the floor so we could measure how far these balls were traveling and firing from different coordinates, which was pretty interesting. The first clip I want to show you, though, I want you to look to the right of the screen. You're going to see a big white arrow, and this little boy is going to fire off his ping pong ball. Makes me laugh every time I see that. It's amazing what you can do with spoons and rubber bands, honestly. It had a retractable rapid-fire arm. I still have no clue how he built it. No clue. The next one I'm going to show you, though, this is the same task. Look at the top of the screen with the little girl under the white arrow. She's up on the chair here. And this little girl, she developed a counterbalance system. And when this thing was all done, she had a locking pin that would lock on the chair. She could pull the locking pin and this counterweight would flip and the ball would land in that bucket every single time. And I said to her, how did you come up with that idea? And she goes, I don't know, I just thought of it. That's a sign of true ingenuity, and she's 8. Now, what does it look like, though, when the kids fail? What does it look like? I did a challenge where I had the kids develop these paddle wheel boats. I had 3 rules. Your boat has to float, it has to make it from one end of my water track to the next, and it has to run under rubber band power, whatever that means. So you'll notice in this little clip here, I've got a couple of really good prototypes, little boy and little girl, both having really impressive results. This little guy with the striped shirt, he puts his boat in and it instantly sinks. He grabs it. He shoves it to the end of the water track. He celebrates. Look at his face. Is that a face of failure? No way. This is a child who realizes, okay, I have to go redesign. He's not daunted by that at all because the students knew how to persevere. Sometimes these collaborative opportunities that I would give to the kids would really enhance their thinking too. This is a challenge where I asked the kids to develop a marble roller coaster. My rules were simple. The balls had to roll down a track that you make in a controlled manner, and the whole thing has to fit on a piece of poster board so I can fit them in my classroom. Now, this group of girls, they elected to make theirs entirely out of paper. This is all out of paper with the exception of one plastic cup. That means the structure, the track, everything. So you can imagine not only a lot of paper, but a lot of tape. Now, once the kids had this finished, you think they're going to be satisfied, sense of accomplishment. No way, they don't want to be done. Mr. Stevenson, can we add another track? We have this idea we can do this loop and it can jump out, the ball can jump from one track to the next. They're starting to think about trajectory and momentum. And they're asking, can we stay in at recess? Can we stay after school? Can we come in early? And I'm saying, go home, go outside. I have papers to grade. But the fact is, they were so committed to this problem that even after school, they're still going home and grappling with it. It's amazing. Now, not only did I see some amazing perseverance develop in my students, I also realized that the kids really had a good sense of what opportunities they could choose to pursue as adults in STEM if they chose to. The little girl on the left one day said to me, Mr. Stevenson, I want to be a chemical engineer when I grow up. And I said, oh, that's wonderful. What would you like to do? And her answer really indicated to me, she knew exactly what chemical engineering is all about because she said, I want to design makeup. She was sincere. She was accurate. Now, I like to believe that children naturally think outside the box. And it's really up to adults to help cultivate that. We do it at home, we do it at school, we do it in the community. And when we think about the future, we're going to need some really good problem solvers. Really good problem solvers. In fact, there's even a global race to try to increase the number of people who aspire to STEM fields because of the innovation and needs that await us. So it's all of our responsibilities to help kids learn to persevere and solve problems. But what can we do? As parents, and I am a parent of two wonderful children, we want to provide open-ended challenges for the kids. I like to provide lots of recyclable materials. Look what this kid did with a box. It's amazing. If you give them opportunities like this to build and create, they're being ingenious and innovative and creative. Take kids to hands-on science museums and let them explore. Or you can do like what my dad did for me and give them an old radio that doesn't work, snip off the plug, and take it apart together just to see what's inside. Educators have a unique opportunity too. As we think about trying to integrate our content when we teach, we not only increase the depth of understanding, we also free up instructional time so we can embed amazing projects and STEM challenges right into our daily instruction. It's daunting, but if you start slow, researching online, finding some projects, looking at the next generation science standards that were released last year that have some really good suggestions in there, partnering with field scientists to come into the classroom to make it come to life and make it relevant, and above all, believe that your children are going to be a genius.